All right. Hold on a second. The joys of doing stuff at home. Hey, I want to say thank you all for joining us once again on this Tuesday night family and friends Bible study. Um, I got you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right, we good to go. Cooking with grease now. Hey, but want to once again say thank you all for your participation, making it out. It really does bless me to see you all on Tuesday nights. For those who thank you for your participation as well. Listen, before I get started, I want to put this charge before you all. One of the things that I've been noticing, especially with the word that I've been getting lately, there seems to be a lot of emphasis on it's not only maturity, but there's a degree of challenge in the word that the Lord has been giving me to share on these Tuesday nights. And one thing that I want to ask you all is to come with an expectation. The last thing that you want to do is have an attitude where the word becomes common to you. It's almost like, well, it is what it is. It's just the word. Keep in mind our world, the world that you live in, was shaped by a word. Not only the world that we live in was shaped by a word, but you were created by a word. Even the world that we live in for ourselves, the world that we create, at some point in time, we spoke concerning that word. And so we never want to get to the point where, we have this attitude where it is, because you can hear a word on any given day, any given night, and on these Tuesday nights that will radically shift the direction of your life, where God will grip you, and that word that He gives you will really it will set the course for your future. And so one of the things that, like I said, I wanted to make sure is that we never have an attitude where it is what it is. Jesus Christ, He is the Word. Even as the Word declares that He was there in the beginning. Uh, Jesus Christ is the Word, and so let's not get to the point where it's so common that we already have our ears dulled to what it is that the Lord is wanting to share with us. Okay. Last week we did not have a normal Bible study per se, but what we did was we used that time as a dedicated time for prayer. And during that time of prayer, one thing that I kept hearing is that the charge for us to see ourselves as the priest of our homes, the priest of our home. And I've talked about this before on the Thursday night, or excuse me, on the Thursday discipleship group. However, I understand that if I'm not talking to the whole, I don't want to make an assumption that it's something that you understand. It's assumptive for me to believe that everybody understands it, especially if I know that I haven't had an opportunity to share it with the group per se. And so one thing that I know I do not want to do is that I don't want to throw around a lot of concepts and tell you that it's an expectation without at least explaining what they mean. Uh, Also, one of the things that I want to do is that as we talk on today about being the priest of your home, towards the end, and hopefully I don't forget, but I want to also share with you all some spiritual disciplines that I would encourage you to start incorporating in your life. So, with that being said, we're just going to read really quickly from a passage of scripture in First Peter, and this is First Peter chapter 2. We're going to start at verse 9, and I think we're gonna read down to verse 12. Once again, thank you all for who are joining us online, as well in the Zoom community. This is First Peter chapter 2, verse 9, and it reads, "But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, His own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who once were not a people, but now are a people of God, who had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Beloved, I beg you, as sojourners and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul, having your conduct honorable among the Gentiles, that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may, by your good works, which they observe, glorify God in the day of visitation. And so once again, tonight, we're going to talk about being the priest of your home. I've shared this thought before, and I'll say it again, that when we read the Bible, what we have is we have the benefit of looking at the experiences of people in the past. You know, we get to see men and women of God who had their own flaws. They had their issues, but when they submitted to God, they were used and they had these powerful experiences. Now, I imagine in that moment, they didn't know that their lives would serve as a template. But every time we read the Bible, we are reading someone's lived experience. You know, these aren't just fictitious. These aren't fictitious people. These were real people who we have the benefit of seeing their experience and how their life played out when they submitted to God. And so when we see the text, when we see these flaws, when we see these issues, I mean, if you think about it, in the Bible, there's prostitutes, there's murderers, there's drunkards, there was someone who had a speech impediment, there were people dealing with depression, and through their submission to God, their stories became an example to us. And I mention this because your life, and I want you, I can't see you, but I want you to put your finger on yourself and say, my life has the power to be an example to those that we don't know need our submission. All right, so I'm gonna read it from my paper this time. Your life has the power to be an example to those you don't know that are in need for your submission. Long story short, what you get delivered from and what you get the victory in will one day serve as the catalyst to help someone else in their own moment. And so whether that is by you telling them or them being able to have access to that story, long story short, they will be able to see how their similar situation, if they too put their trust in the Lord, how they too can get the victory in that area. And so I mentioned this because once again, we need to get to the point where we start to see ourselves as the priest of our home. This conversation about being the priest of your home, what it really boils down to is that we have to understand what God has trusted us with. And also we need to start recognizing the response that we're supposed to have when things happen. Your faith walk is not a spectator sport. Ultimately, if you don't get anything, I want you to hear that part. Your faith walk is not a spectator sport. And oftentimes what we're doing is that we're allowing stuff to happen, but we're not engaging with the world. A part of the dominion assignment is that, Adam announced how things were to be. And he himself was able to give a language and an expectation of the world that he lived in. And so even Jesus himself, when he was speaking things, especially as it related to healing and deliverance, when he spoke, he understood that, what I'm about to say, I'm going to realize it for myself. And so he was actively engaged. And the issue is that oftentimes we're not actively engaged in our own world. We allow life to happen to us, and then we get frustrated that, things aren't happening the way that we want to. And the reality is that the reason why this is because somewhere down the line, we have relinquished control to someone or something that never asked for that degree of control. And so as it relates to this conversation about being the priest of your home, I'm going to refer to two different priestly orders on today, and we'll kind of see what happens going forward. The first one is going to be the Levitical order, and then the second one is going to be the order of Melchizedek. All right, so I'm trying not to get too heady today, but I want to lay a context as it relates to being the priest of your home. And so the Levitical order of priests, they were established when God set Aaron and his sons in position. And you see this in Exodus chapter 28. I think it goes on to, I know it goes on for several chapters. I want to say it probably stops around chapter 30. But without going into all the detail, God establishes an order and standard for those who administer to him as priest. And so ultimately what happens with Aaron is that God consecrates him. He sets him aside, and he gives him the standard, him and his sons, the standard for what it means to be a priest unto God. And so what happens is that now Aaron and all of the priests, on behalf of the people, the priests will begin to start officiating these offerings, these sacrifices, and these offerings and sacrifices in the Old Testament. Many of them are associated with, the various needs of the people. I'm talking about forgiveness, provision, blessings, peace. There's like a hundreds of different offerings and sacrifices. And I don't know if that's literal when I say hundreds, but there are a lot of offerings. You had a burnt offering, a heave offering. There was a ritual for purification. All of these things the priest was responsible for administering. But the one I want to highlight the most on tonight was the annual sacrifice for sins, the atonement of the people. And once a year, what would happen is that the high priest would go into what was called the Holy of Holies, and he would offer a sacrifice on behalf of himself and the people. Now, I want to capture this. This is Hebrews chapter 9. I'm going to start at verse 7. And so this is New Testament now, but it's encapsulating what took place in the Old Testament when the priests would do the annual sacrifice. But in the second part, the high priest went alone once a year, not without blood, which he offered for himself and for the people's sin committed in ignorance. And I'm going to stop right there. And so in the Old Testament, the priest could only go beyond the veil once a year. But we understand that with the death of Jesus Christ, the veil has been torn and it gives us access now. Okay. And so in the Old Testament, the priest went where others were unable to go. And our charge is to go where others are unwilling to go. Okay. So I'm going to say that one more time. In the Old Testament, the priest went where others were unable to go. But our charge is to go where others are unwilling to go. The reason why I say this is that we cannot assume that people have a relationship with the Lord. Okay. We can't assume that people know how to get into his presence. We live in a time, and I heard this before, and I love this analogy. Dr. Tim, good to see you, sir. We live in a time that's similar to Acts, I believe it's chapter 17. And when you get a chance, I would encourage you to read it. But this is Paul, and he's at a place called Mars Hill. And so in Mars Hill, they have this statue, and it says, "To the unknown God," right? So the people were aware of God, but they did not know the God that they were acknowledging. We live in a time right now where people are aware of God, and because they're aware of God, we've made the assumption that they know God, and that's a dangerous thing. And so once again, our charge is to go where others are unwilling to go. And so in the Old Testament, the people, they knew to bring a sacrifice annually. That was a part of their custom. But we live in a time where prayer is not a common cultural understanding. And I'm talking about being the priest of your home, because in many instances, there's family members, there's friends, and when we say we'll just pray about it, we're saying the right thing, but we're making the assumption that they know how to do it, and that's a dangerous thing. And so we're in essence, in the moment, is we're not being who we need to be in the moment. And so, we could be leading them, we could be assisting them, we could be giving them instruction on how to do it, but we're making the assumption. And then when they don't do it, we're like, well, I thought you were going to pray about it. But they don't have the understanding associated with it, because in many instances, we are taking that posture where, once again, we are not being what's needed in the moment, and that's being the priest. And so we've been talking about being in sync with God. And as a priest, we must approach this not as a suggestion, but as a responsibility. The expectation of the priest is the realization that they need to be close to God. Because once again, when we reference that high priest, he was going to a place that no one else could go. Once a year, as he went into the Holy of Holies, no one else was allowed to do that. But like we said, as the veil is torn, we as priests of our own, from and we're going to reference this again for First Peter. We as priests ourselves, we have the responsibility to press into his presence. The veil has been torn. And the question is what's keeping us from going beyond? If the veil was torn, that's an acknowledgement that God is giving us access, but not everybody is taking advantage of the access that has been given to us. And so let me say this: we who operate in the spirit of love as the priest of our homes, we have a responsibility to declare what we want to see in our home. The priest, not only did they do it for the community, but we also see that they did it for themselves. And so what I would say is that we who have experienced the goodness of the Lord and obtained favor and mercy, as First Peter says, we are now positioned to pray for it on the behalf of others. Once again, your spiritual walk is not a spectator sport. You are in a position to minister what you have received. Let me clarify that by once again going to First Peter, and I'm just going to read that second chapter, verse 9. All right, I got my good old Bible today. All right, this is verse 9. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. You are to minister what you have received. Now, I also mentioned the second order of priesthood, and that was from the line of Melchizedek. And listen, I'm not trying to get all into the weeds on this one. I would encourage you to do your own research as it relates to who Melchizedek was. There's conversation if he was Jesus. There's a lot of stuff, but I ain't talking about that tonight. But long story short, Melchizedek, he's actually the first reference of a priest in the Bible. And you can read that. I believe that's in Genesis 16. But what happens is that Melchizedek blesses Abram after a battle. And so Melchizedek, it says something very interesting. It says that he was the king of Salem. And what's interesting about that is that Salem means peace, right? And so a part of his function as a king and as a priest of his home, he lived in Salem, was to maintain the peace. The king, the priest, maintaining the peace. The king, the priest, maintaining the peace. And a lot of our issues is that we're not maintaining what we have been given charge of. We're not maintaining what it is that God has delivered unto us. And so, the chaos that happens, we allow it to run rampant because we have lost sight of the fact that we have the power to pronounce what we expect to see in our own lives. And so, as the priest, my question to you is, will you make the profession even when your eyes don't, in your eyes, it doesn't look like what you want to see? Are you going to go by this, or are you going to go by what you see in your spirit and speak it and hold fast to that until what you spoke now looks like, until you now see what it is that you spoke? The last thing that I will put before you all is that in many instances there are people who are trying to reserve things that are supposed to happen in the moment. They're trying to put it off, is ultimately what I'm getting at. And there are moments that the Lord has orchestrated for you, but because of our fear, we shifted the moment unto someone else. I was sharing this with a brother of mine. And the reality is that, there are times when people will, let's say someone comes to you and they're in a need of some sorts, right? And I've seen this a lot before in the past. What the person would do is in that moment say, you know what, well, come with me to church on Sunday, and this might be like a Tuesday, this might be a Wednesday. They're losing sight of what's supposed to take place in that moment. They're making an assumption that that person is going to be there on the weekend. And so what they're saying is reserve the issue until I can get you connected with someone else. When the reality is that we have to have the confidence that the Lord has put us in that moment because we are the response to that time. And so once again, as the priest of your home, I don't want to make the assumption once again that people understand it. But as we talk about it right now, what I'm saying to you is that you have a responsibility. And so declare what you want to see in your home. Stand on that. I was sharing this last week. We talked about this in prayer, and right before the prayer, the Lord had put this really heavy on me. And this was, I believe it was in First Corinthians, if I'm not mistaken. But this is what Paul said. He said, I became all things unto men that I might win some. And so the reality is that in the moment, I might have to be your strength until you yourself come into strength. And it's not me saying that, I'm taking the place of Jesus Christ. No, it's me saying that I know that I co-labor with Christ. That the word says Christ in you, the hope of glory. If he's in me, why am I not taking advantage of what he's called me to do? Why am I off-putting my responsibility? And once again, we have to start seeing ourselves in this position. And so what I would encourage you to do is, as you read the text, as you read the Bible, start to see yourself in the book. When you see Jesus, I want you to insert your name, almost like you're taking the journey along with him. And then ask yourself, you know what, if this situation came up, how would I respond? And then what you should affirm to yourself is, I will respond like Christ did. I will respond like Jesus did. And what this is going to do, this is going to help you in your walk with the Lord. One of the reasons why I'm so adamant about the stuff that I share with you all is because I've been saved since 1999-ish. And so we're talking about over 20 years. And my introduction to the Lord, and I'm saying this, it's not that, I never went to church, as a young man. It's saying that as an adult, I chose to give my life to the Lord. But what I will tell you is that my introduction to the Lord was built upon me being sin conscious. Me saying, well, you can't do this. You can't, in order to be saved, you can't do this. You can't do that. And so my framework for the first 15 years of my walk was rooted in me being able to master the language of church, but not having a real relationship with the Lord. Because if somebody would have taught me, hey, you know what? This is how you hear the voice of the Lord. This is what the Lord wants. He wants you to be his son. He wants you to grow up and mature in the things that he's trusted to you. I believe that it would have definitely kept me from knocking my head over a lot of these issues. It would have definitely kept me out of this place of almost being like a Pharisees, very judgmental, calling things that I wasn't familiar with. I was calling those things not of God. But the reality is that who am I to say that, because I hadn't had that experience with God. So I was basing stuff off my experience. So long story short, I feel it's my charge to really say, you know what, let's build your foundation on understanding the relationship with the Lord based upon identity. Let's talk about the things that trip many of us as believers up. There's a lot of things that I literally had to kind of pull from my mind and say, you know what caused me to believe that, because that's not even scripturally consistent. What it becomes the doctrine of men, the tradition of men. And so one of the things that we aim to do here is challenge the traditions of men, and then get you to the point where you're asking yourself, okay, what is the Lord telling me? Because if I'm here, then there's obviously a reason for me being here. God is very intentional. He didn't just put you here and say, figure it out. No, he wants us to be in relationship. And in that relationship, he's going to lead us in the way of truth. And so before I get out of here, we transition to our time of Q&A. Once again, we're talking about being the priest of your home. And I want to put before you some spiritual disciplines. Listen, this is not an exhaustive list. This ain't all of them. You know what? I'll even say it like this. If it feels applicable to you, give it a try. If it doesn't, well, hey, it's not going to cost you your salvation. All right. But I do believe that it's going to help you in your maturation. And it's also going to help you to develop a level of confidence as it relates to being the priest in your home. And so the first one I would say is, of course, and it's obvious, reading your Bible. That cannot be, overstated. Give yourself to studying the word. And here's what I would say to you. Don't approach it just like a book. The word of God is living. I've read the Bible so many times and literally get a new revelation. I'd be like, man, I know I read the scripture like 100 times, and it's almost like I'm seeing something new every time that I read it. And so I would encourage you to ask, Holy Spirit, make this word plain to me and reveal to me something that I haven't seen before. The second thing that I would put before you as a spiritual discipline is prayer and meditation. And so, I think that goes without saying. Prayer and meditation is not just always talking. Sometimes we need to listen. Sometimes we do more yapping than we do listening, and God is talking to us. So make sure that we're hearing what it is that he's saying. Make sure that we're meditating on his word. The third thing, and I shared this last week, worship. Worship is I got to come up with a different word. Worship is a master key. And so long story short, God lives in a place of praise and worship. He's in that environment all the time. And so I say it's a master key because it helps us to get into his presence. Okay. Another one, this is fasting. And I want y'all to hear me. And when we go to Q&A, I'm sure we can talk about this a little bit more if somebody has something to say about it. But fasting, and I want you to hear this, fasting does not necessarily get God to move, okay? But what it does is it gets you out the way, okay? And then the last thing that I will put before you, once again, this is not an all exhaustive list, but I would say serving. Okay. One of the things that the Lord had told me is that 100% consumers, meaning that if you are a consumer in every environment, you are violating the principle of dominion. The word says, freely you've received and freely give. We have to make sure that, as we're getting, we're also availing ourselves to give as well. And it's problematic if you're always receiving but never giving. Okay, the revelation, whatever you have to offer, there should be environments when you're able to give to others because they need what you have. And so, with that being said, listen, I want to encourage you to make sure that you are viewing Satan Destroyed on Arrival. It's a 7-part series that we're airing right now. Powerful teaching. I'm telling you, if you are one who blames the devil for everything, this teaching is probably going to bust your bubble. but it's necessary because once again we give the adversary more credit than he is due. He is a defeated foe, but we speak of him as though he is a victor. And so we have to get out of that framework. And once again, that's a theology that many of us have been taught, and we don't even know it. Every time something bad happens, it's the devil. And so we have to be careful that we are not giving him a praise that he does not deserve. And so that's Satan Dead on Arrival. The first 3 teachings are already up on the Kingdom Learning Center page, and I want to encourage you all to check that out. But once again, if you are viewing us on the online, on the social media, I want to say thank you for joining us. If you are interested in participating on our Zoom call, this is where we do. We all come together as a group, and we have the time of question and answer. DM us, and we'll get you that information. If you want to sow into the ministry, we are on Cash App, and you can do so at $Kingdom Learning. Once again, that is $Kingdom Learning. I want to say thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all next week, Lord willing. Take care and God bless.